Episode 59. Someone chooses to stay. The offer does not arrive as a demand. That is how Ethan knows it is real. There is no pressure, no tightening of silence, no hum of recalibration. The city moves with its recent bluntness, tolerance is reduced, edges sharper than they used to be. The past presses outward in places. Time compensates by hardening elsewhere. Containment is becoming expensive. Ethan feels it in the way spaces refuse to settle. Streets that should feel complete feel provisional. Buildings feel heavier, as if they are being asked to carry more history than their foundations were designed for. This is not failure. This is load. At 3:07, the minute lands with a dull certainty. Not fractured, not stretched, just heavy. And then the option appears. Not visually, conceptually. Ethan is standing near the old street again, not because he wants to be, but because his body has begun to recognize where strain accumulates. He has become a sensor without intending to. Stability routes through him. So does pressure. The street is quieter today. Too quiet. The overlay does not surface fully, but it presses close enough that the air feels crowded. Sounds arrive slightly late. Smells linger longer than they should. Containment is thinning here. Ethan understands the rule now. When correction cannot localize cleanly, time looks for anchors. Not fixes. Anchors. Points where instability can be tied off without collapsing everything else around it. Usually, those anchors are events. Sometimes, places. Very rarely, people. The realization settles without panic. Ethan does not step back. He steps closer. At 3:07, the pressure arrives. Not around him. Through him. This is different from being hunted. Different from being routed. This feels like being considered. The street holds its breath. Ethan speaks quietly, not to provoke, not to negotiate. Others are paying for this, he says. The words are not a question. They are an assessment. The pressure tightens slightly. Confirmation. Containment failures always export cost. The system does not intend cruelty. But intent is irrelevant to effect. Ethan closes his eyes. He sees the pattern clearly now. The past is pushing outward. The present is fraying. Time is hardening corrections to compensate. Each hardening harms people who had no part in the negotiations that caused this. Children freezing mid-step. Elderly people losing minutes they cannot afford. Cities adjusting too fast for bodies to keep up. Containment must happen somewhere. If it does not, escalation will. Season 4 is not inevitable because humans resist. It is inevitable because the system is running out of distributed solutions. At 3:07, Ethan feels the shape of the offer fully. Containment without rebellion. Stability without erasure. Local resolution at the cost of permanence. Someone must stay. Not trapped violently. Not punished. Held. Ethan opens his eyes. The street looks unchanged. But he knows that if someone accepts, this place will stabilize. The overlays will stop surfacing here. The pressure will bleed off into a single, fixed point. A human one. Others will be spared. Not saved. Spared. The distinction matters. Ethan laughs softly. Tragic consent is always framed as heroism by those who benefit from it. The system does not frame it at all. It simply checks whether the variable is available. He thinks of the deals he made, the desire he gave up, the futures he collapsed. All of it has been moving him here, not as destiny, as narrowing. He is one of the few remaining humans structurally capable of accepting this without resistance. Resistance would invalidate the anchor. Consent is the requirement. At 3:07, the pressure clarifies. Ethan understands the terms instantly. Containment is not death. It is not erasure. It is not even imprisonment in the human sense. It is fixation. Time will no longer route around him. It will no longer optimize through him. It will no longer allow his state to change. He will remain present, aware, static. Others will move freely again. The city will regain tolerance. The past will stop pushing here. Corrections will soften elsewhere. Not everywhere, but enough. Ethan considers refusal, not emotionally, Logistically, if he refuses, the system will continue searching for anchors, less stable ones, unwilling ones, or it will escalate control globally. Containment will happen anyway, just messier. He considers delay. Delay only increases export cost. Time does not threaten. Counts. At 3:07, Ethan exhales and speaks. I understand. The words land cleanly. No echo. No confirmation tone. Understanding is not acceptance. It is qualification. He takes a step forward, into the densest part of the street, where the air feels thickest. The pressure follows, wrapping him not like restraint but like orientation. He can feel the boundaries forming. Not walls. Conditions. What happens to me? He asks quietly. The answer arrives without language. Nothing happens. That is the cost. No progression. No regression. No exit. He will remain a fixed reference. Ethan nods once. He thinks of Maya. Not emotionally. Conceptually. He thinks of the life he collapsed. The desires he surrendered. The lies he told to survive. All of it converges here. This is not redemption. This is accounting. At 3:07, Ethan says the only thing that matters. I choose to stay. The pressure locks. Not violently. Decisively. The street exhales. The air thins. Sounds align. Somewhere far away, a child completes a step without freezing. Somewhere else, a train slows gently instead of jolting. Containment has begun. Ethan feels it immediately. Not pain. Immobility. Not physical. Ontological. The world begins to move around him instead of with him. The option to leave dissolves. Not closed. Inconceivable. At 3:07, the minute passes. Clean. For the first time in a long while, the city does not strain. Ethan remains standing in the street, breathing steadily. He is not trapped. He is placed. And the system, finally, has found somewhere to tie the weight it can no longer distribute. Containment does not close like a door. It sets. Ethan feels the difference immediately. Not pressure easing, not silence returning, but a change in how movement relates to him. The street breathes again. Sound aligns. Smells disperse instead of lingering. The past, which had been pressing outward like a held breath, relaxes into weight. The city resumes. Ethan does not. People pass him without noticing anything unusual. That is essential. Containment that attracts attention becomes instability. The system does not allow spectacle here. He stands where he stood moments ago, but the relation has inverted. The world now routes around him. He tests it without intention. He shifts his weight. The sensation completes. But it does not continue. Movement resolves into stillness the moment it finishes, like a pendulum damped instantly at center. He can act. He can speak. He can breathe. He cannot go. At 3:07, the minute passes cleanly, without friction, without echo. Ethan notices something subtle then. The clock across the street no longer draws his attention. The minute has lost its function as a signal. Containment has absorbed it. He turns his head slowly. The street looks ordinary again. Windows reflect the sky accurately. The faint overlay he sensed earlier has receded fully, like a tide withdrawing after deciding where it belongs. The past has stopped pushing here. That is the gain. Not restoration. Stability. Ethan understands now that containment is not confinement in space. It is confinement in option. The city can change. People can move. Futures can branch elsewhere. He will not. Not because he is restrained. Because he has been designated a constant. Time prefers constants when variables multiply too quickly. A woman exits a nearby shop, pauses when she sees him standing still, then smiles politely and walks on. Her path curves naturally around him, not consciously, not with effort. It is as if the sidewalk has adjusted to include him as a fixture. He is not in the way. He is accounted for. At 3:07, he senses the first confirmation ripple propagate outward. Not a wave, not a search. A quiet reallocation. Somewhere far away, a correction that would have snapped now softens. Pause lengthens just enough. A misfire aligns. He does not feel pride. Pride would create imbalance. He feels use. That is different. Hours pass. Ethan does not measure them. Time continues, but measurement is no longer necessary. There is no deadline, no anticipation, no end state approaching. Containment removes urgency because urgency implies motion toward resolution. He sits on the low wall by the street and watches the day settle. Shadows lengthen. Traffic thickens, then thins. The city behaves like itself again. That is the cost working. He feels something else now, quieter than fear, heavier than calm. Finality. Not death. Not erasure. Completion without conclusion. A man across the street drops a bag of groceries. Items scatter. He curses softly and kneels to gather them. Another passerby helps without hesitation. Their movements are smooth. No lag. No misalignment. Ethan sees it clearly. The system has regained tolerance. Elsewhere, because here tolerance has been fixed. At 3:07, Ethan becomes aware of an absence that surprises him. Loneliness. Not the feeling. The concept. Containment has removed the comparative axis. There is no elsewhere he could be instead. No life he could have chosen. Loneliness requires alternatives. He has none. That is the deeper cost. A child approaches him, tugging at her mother's hand. "Why is he standing there?" she asks, loud and unfiltered. The mother smiles apologetically. "Some people like to watch the street," she says. The child considers this, then nods, satisfied. Ethan meets the child's gaze and offers a small smile. She waves. He lifts his hand and waves back. The motion completes and settles. At 3:07, the minute passes unnoticed by everyone else. Ethan realizes then that he is no longer synchronized to social time. Conversations start and end around him without inviting him in or excluding him. He exists adjacent to participation. Witness. Anchor. He could speak to someone if he chose. He could answer questions. But he cannot join trajectories. Containment does not isolate. It neutralizes. Night arrives. Lights come on in windows. Reflections multiply. The street hums with evening life. Ethan remains where he is, posture relaxed, breathing steady. He wonders briefly whether the system will check on him again. The thought dissolves. Checks imply uncertainty. The system is certain now. At 3:07, something shifts again. Not locally, globally. Ethan feels it like a pressure drop across a wide area. The kind pilots feel when a storm breaks elsewhere and the air redistributes. Containment has reached capacity. Not here. Across the network. He understands the implication. This was not a one-time sacrifice. It is a pattern. Time has learned something from him. Tragic consent works. Not because it is noble. Because it is efficient. That knowledge will not remain localized. Ethan closes his eyes. He does not see visions. He senses structure. Future containment points forming conceptually, not yet activated. Places where instability might later be tied off to willing anchors. Season 4 will not be built on rebellion. It will be built on who is asked next. And who refuses. At 3:07, the silence feels neutral. That is the final proof. Containment that creates silence is unstable. Containment that normalizes noise is complete. Ethan stands as night deepens. People pass him in coats, talking, laughing, arguing. Life continues. No one thanks him. No one blames him. That is essential. Gratitude would create moral imbalance. Blame would create resistance. The system requires neither. He is not a hero. He is not a victim. He is a solution. The most dangerous kind. Because solutions get reused. Ethan looks down the street one last time and lets his gaze settle without expectation. There is no rescue coming. There does not need to be. Containment is not a sentence. It is a role. And he has accepted it fully. 3:07, the city breathes evenly. The past stays quiet. The present holds. Others move forward again. And Ethan remains, fixed gently in place, the cost absorbed into a single human shape that time can no longer distribute. Someone chose to stay. And the world adjusted.